Witchcraft has been around for centuries and spans many different cultures. Nowadays, witchcraft isn't seen in the same light as it was in the past. People used to fear witchcraft, sorcery, and anything else to do with the devil or dark forces, to the point they would execute those accused.
Here in Dundee, we've had our fair share of accused witches too, the most legendary being Grissell Jaffray. Grissell Jaffray is famous in Dundee history for the crime of being a witch. She was choked and burned at the stake in a public execution and is the last person to have been burned in Dundee for the crime of witchcraft. Much of the truth is unknown about Grissell Jaffray, with some believing her to be the wife of local man James Butchart, while others maintain that she was the spouse of Thomas Butchart or Butchard. What is known about Grissell is that she was burned in Dundee's town centre in 1669.
Grissell Jaffray was incarcerated in the toll booth before being accused of witchcraft and cavorting with the devil himself. Suspiciously, the records pertaining to Grissell's crimes were destroyed in a fire, so nobody really knows what she stood trial for, or indeed why. Leading ministers in the Presbytery of Dundee were held responsible for the barbaric murder of Grissell Jaffray, namely Harry Scrimsur, John Guthrie and William Raitt. For those fortunate or unfortunate enough to be given a trial, eyewitness testimonials played a heavy part in the prosecution. Accused witches stood by as their own townsfolk laid waste to their credibility, desperate to rid their town of anyone they perceived to be dabbling in the black arts. In other witch trials, the accused would be tried by water, whereby they were forced under the water in the belief that Satan would not allow his daughter to be harmed and she would continue to breathe. Naturally, the witches drowned, thus rendering the exercise pointless and needlessly barbaric.
Rather than change this practice, the belief was that those who were not witches and died by this method would be welcomed in heaven. Artefacts such as herbs and decorated bowls would be used as evidence in convicting women of witchcraft. Some women stood accused based on the fact that they had an unusual mole or skin tag, which was referred to as a witch's teat. The accused were stripped naked and their bodies thoroughly searched by a witch pricker for the devil's marks. The Scottish Witchcraft Act of 1563 made the practice of witchcraft and the consorting with witches punishable as a capital offence. By the middle of the 17th century, amidst religious and political tensions, the Act was amended to include the words devils and familiar spirits, the sentence being death. There is no record of what happened to Grissell during her time in the toll booth, or of the events leading up to her incarceration, but one theory seems to suggest that her death was no more than a religious assassination in a time of great religious unrest.
Popular methods of torture included using red-hot pincers to tear off bits of flesh or breast from the accused, crushing various body parts and removal of the fingernails. Unlike their English counterparts, witches tried in Scotland were routinely tortured for their confessions, so it's highly likely that Grissell was tortured relentlessly in one or many of these ways in an attempt to evoke her admission of guilt.
Find out more about witchcraft, the occult, and much, much more at darkdundee.co.uk.